I never wanted to be rich. Growing up, my parents taught me the value of hard work and humility. Dad ran a small diner, and Mom helped out while also working as a teacher's assistant. We weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy either, just comfortable enough to be happy. That's why when I inherited my grandfather's real estate empire at 25, I decided to keep it quiet. I wanted to find someone who would love me for who I was, not for my bank account. I continued working as a waitress at Charlie's Diner, the same place I'd worked through college. That's where I met Michael. He came in every morning for coffee and pancakes, always sitting in my section. Unlike the other suits who barely looked up from their phones, Michael actually talked to me. He asked about my day, remembered my stories, and made me laugh with his terrible dad jokes. After 3 months of daily pancakes and shy smiles, he finally asked me out. "I know this great little Italian place," he said, nervously fiddling with his tie. "Unless you're sick of serving food and would rather get served for a change." I said yes, and that dinner changed my life. Michael was everything I'd hoped for: kind, funny, and genuinely interested in me, not my wallet. When he told me he was a successful architect, I was happy but not impressed by his status. I fell in love with the man who spent our third date helping an elderly couple change their flat tire in the rain. The trouble started when I met his family, particularly his mother, Victoria Armstrong. The Armstrong family was old money, and Victoria never let anyone forget it. The first time I visited their mansion, she looked me up and down like I was something stuck to her designer shoe. "A waitress," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. How quaint. Michael always had a charitable heart. Michael defended me, but Victoria's comments only got worse over time. She'd make pointed remarks about my simple background, my limited education. I had a business degree, but apparently that wasn't good enough. And my unfortunate career choice. Still, I loved Michael, and he loved me. We got married in a simple ceremony that Victoria called embarrassingly modest. I didn't care. I was happy, and my secret fortune remained safe in the various corporations and trusts my grandfather had set up. Everything changed at Victoria's annual summer gala. She'd been planning it for months, inviting Boston's elite to show off her mansion and her social status. The morning of the party, my lawyer called with interesting news. The deed to Victoria's precious mansion had finally cleared. I'd bought it through one of my shell corporations, along with most of the properties in her exclusive neighborhood. I almost told Michael about my wealth that morning, but Victoria's behavior at the party changed everything. I arrived early to help set up, wearing a simple but elegant blue dress. Victoria took one look at me and sneered. "Oh dear, is that off the rack?" "Well, I suppose it's the best you could do on a waitress's salary." I ignored her, like always. The party started, and Victoria's mansion filled with Boston's wealthy and powerful. I recognized most of them, not as their waitress, but as their landlord through various property holdings. They just didn't know it. The humiliation came during Victoria's speech. She stood on the grand staircase, champagne in hand, and began thanking everyone for coming. Then she spotted me trying to blend into the crowd. "Oh, and let's not forget our special guest," she said, her voice carrying across the marble foyer. "My son's wife, the waitress. You know, sometimes I think Michael married her just to spite me. I mean, what else could a successful architect want with a girl who serves pancakes for a living?" The crowd laughed. Some looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. Michael was stuck in traffic, running late. I was alone. Perhaps she thought marrying my son would be her ticket to a better life. Victoria continued, clearly drunk on both wine and attention. "But darling, you'll always be what you are. A worthless waitress playing dress-up in our world." I felt hundreds of eyes on me. Victoria's words hung in the air, sharp and cruel. But instead of crying or running away, I smiled. A calm, knowing smile that seemed to unnerve Victoria slightly. "Thank you for your hospitality, Victoria," I said quietly. "I'll see myself out." As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone and called my lawyer. "John, remember that renovation clause in the new rental agreement? Let's put it into action, first thing tomorrow morning." I drove home to wait for Michael, knowing that Victoria's perfect world was about to crumble. The next morning would bring a surprise that would wipe the smug smile off her face forever. When Michael finally got home that night, I was sitting in our kitchen, waiting. He rushed in, looking devastated. "I heard what happened," he said, pulling me into a hug. I'm so sorry, Mom was completely out of line. I'll talk to her, make her apologize. I shook my head, fighting back tears, not from sadness, but from the weight of what I was about to reveal. Michael, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you long ago. But before I could continue, my phone buzzed. It was John, my lawyer. Everything was ready for tomorrow morning. Victoria's perfect world was about to be turned upside down, and for the first time since I'd met her, I couldn't wait to see my mother-in-law. The next morning dawned bright and clear. I woke up early, my heart racing with anticipation. Michael had already left for an important client meeting, unaware that today would change everything. I dressed carefully in a crisp business suit. No more waitress uniform, no more hiding. At exactly 9 a.m., 3 black SUVs pulled up to Victoria's mansion. I watched from my car as my lawyer John led a team of contractors and legal representatives to the front door. Victoria answered, still in her silk robe, her face twisting with annoyance. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. John smiled professionally. "Mrs. Armstrong, I represent Boston Heritage Properties. As your new landlord, we're here to inform you that we'll be beginning extensive renovations on this property, effective immediately." Victoria's face went pale. "Landlord? This is absurd. I own this house." "Not anymore," John replied, handing her a thick envelope. "The property was purchased last month by my client. As per the agreement your lawyer signed, you're now renting with a mandatory renovation clause." "This is impossible," Victoria screeched. Who dares to?" That was my cue. I stepped out of my car and walked up the marble steps, enjoying the way Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. "Hello, Victoria," I said calmly. "Surprise." She staggered back, gripping the doorframe. "You? But you're a waitress." I smiled, thinking of my grandfather and everything he taught me about business. "I am many things, Victoria. A waitress, yes. I'm also the owner of this house, most of the properties in this neighborhood, and about 60% of the commercial real estate in downtown Boston." The contractors started moving in equipment as Victoria stood frozen in shock. "The renovation will take about 6 months," I continued, "during which time you'll need to vacate the premises. Of course, as your landlord, I'm required to offer you alternative accommodation." I handed her a glossy brochure for a modest apartment complex across town. "It's not quite up to your usual standards, but it's the best I could do on such short notice. Unless you prefer to stay with your sister in Connecticut?" Victoria's face turned an alarming shade of red. He planned this. All along, you were just waiting to humiliate me." "No, Victoria," I said firmly. "I kept my wealth secret because I wanted people to know me for who I am, not what I own. You're the one who chose to judge me, to humiliate me, to treat me like I was worthless because of my job." Just then, Michael's car pulled into the driveway. He got out, staring in confusion at the scene before him. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between me and his mother. Victoria launched into a hysterical explanation, but I held up my hand. "Michael, remember what I tried to tell you last night? It's time you knew the truth." Over the next hour, sitting in what was now technically my living room, I told my husband everything. About my grandfather, the inheritance, why I kept it secret. Michael listened quietly, his expression unreadable. "So all this time," he said finally, "you were worried I might want you for your money?" I nodded, tears forming in my eyes. "I loved you for who you are, Michael. I wanted to be sure you loved me for who I am too." He pulled me into a tight hug. I fell in love with a kind, hard-working waitress who always had time to help others and never looked down on anyone. Finding out she's also a secret real estate mogul doesn't change anything except maybe where we go for vacation. Victoria, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly found her voice. "Michael, can't you see? She deceived us. She made fools of us." Michael turned to his mother, his expression hardening. "No, Mom, you made a fool of yourself. All those times you mocked and belittled my wife, you showed everyone exactly who you are. The only difference is now they know who she is too." Over the next few weeks, Victoria's perfect world crumbled. The renovation forced her to move to the apartment I'd offered. Her sister mysteriously had no room for her. Her social circle buzzed with the news that the waitress they'd all laughed at was actually their landlord. But the real change came 3 months later. I was leaving Charlie's Diner after my usual Saturday morning shift. Yes, I still worked there, because I loved it. When Victoria walked in, she looked different, humbler. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said quietly, "about who I am, about how I treat people. I owe you an apology." I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse for the first time. "Would you like some coffee?" I asked. "I make a pretty good cup for a worthless waitress." She flinched at her own words being thrown back at her. "I deserve that. I deserve all of this. I miss my son, and I know that means making things right with you first." I poured her a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. "You know, Victoria, the renovation clause doesn't actually require you to move out. I just wanted you to understand what it feels like to have your world turned upside down by someone else's judgment." She stared at me, realization dawning. "You mean you can move back into the mansion once you've learned to treat people with respect, regardless of their job or bank account? Real respect, not just politeness because I'm your landlord." Victoria took a shaky breath. "I'd like that. And maybe you could teach me how to make those pancakes Michael loves so much." I couldn't help but smile. "We'll start with coffee basics and work our way up." That day marked a new beginning. Victoria did move back into the mansion eventually, but not before spending 6 months working part-time at the diner with me. She learned every employee's name, their stories, their dreams. She learned that worth isn't measured by wealth or status, but by how you treat others. Michael and I moved into a penthouse downtown, but we kept our modest apartment too. I continued working at the diner because it reminded me of who I was and what really mattered. My grandfather's legacy wasn't just the real estate empire he'd built. It was the values he taught me about hard work, humility, and treating everyone with dignity. Every Sunday now, Victoria joins us for brunch. She makes the coffee herself, and nobody cares that it's not quite as good as mine. What matters is that she finally understands. True worth isn't about owning a mansion. It's about being the kind of person who deserves to live in one. As for me, I'm still that waitress who serves pancakes with a smile. I'm also a wife, a businesswoman, and now, surprisingly, a mother-in-law's teacher in the art of humility. But most importantly, I'm myself. And that's worth more than all the mansions in Boston.